Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of Metcalf's Movie Journal. This is the show where I do quick reviews for the movies that I watch, give them a score out of 10, and then add them to my list. So let's see what movie I'm reviewing today. On May 31st, I watched Waterworld, which came out in 1995. And I missed so much that classic movie setup in a world where this was obviously a Mad Max inspired post-apocalypse movie set in a world where the polar ice caps have melted and somehow covered all the land in, you guessed it, water. This movie requires the same level of suspension of disbelief that any great fantasy world requires, because if you start down the rabbit hole of logical questions, then you're already going the wrong way, because this was only ever meant to be a wild, fun ride. There's not a lot of room for real-world questions when the story being told is so clearly over-the-top insane, as we follow our hero, the Mariner, played by Kevin Costner, as he goes on that classic journey of lone survivor turned savior to a young girl in need of protection. The young girl in question is Enola, made extra special by the fact that she has a special map tattooed on her back that supposedly leads to dry land. I don't want to spoil too much beyond the setup here. Surprisingly, for what I expected to be a fairly simple story, it actually ended up having more than enough going on to carry it right past the 2-hour mark without ever feeling boring. The only other big extra twist I will spoil is the fact that Costner's Mariner character is essentially a fish man, fully equipped with webbed feet and even gills to breathe below water. They make for some pretty bad looking prosthetics, but again, I just found it so easy to forgive some of the low points, for the simple fact of how awesome the whole setting was. If they made this movie nowadays, it's hard to believe they'd filmed so much of it legitimately out on the open ocean. But there's so many amazing shots, even before you start talking about the ridiculously bombastic, over-the-top choreographed action scenes, where it was stunningly clear that what we were looking at was a real beautiful open ocean. And as for those action scenes, they're easily on par with, or better than, anything from the Mad Max franchise, and maybe even more impressive for simply pulling it all off on open water, since you know it just had to add that extra little bit of difficulty to filming it all. The main villain here is Deacon, played by Dennis Hopper, who you might recognize as the bad guy from Speed, which came out only a year before this one. So he clearly had a hand in defining the cheesy villains from action movies in the 90s. It's hard to put all the blame on him though, since he's clearly a talented actor in other things. I just think he just knew what he was doing, playing it a bit silly in a movie that's so clearly silly at its core. Maybe if Costner had been smart enough or charismatic enough to play it with a bit more of a wink or a nod to the audience, or even just crazy like Mel Gibson, it could have been a lot more fun. The movie had an amazing amount of potential, but Costner clearly held this one back in my opinion. I had to look up my dream casting choice, and sure enough, you know who wasn't doing anything in 1995? Kurt freaking Russell. And honestly, he would have been amazing. Stargate came out in 1994, so he was at the top of his game still. It probably could have put this one into a top 100 movie for me. But still, even as it is, I ended up giving it a 7 out of 10, and it landed at number 321 on my list, putting it right here, in between V for Vendetta and The Town. And as always, thanks for watching. Hey everyone, thanks for watching another edition of Metcalf's Movie Journal. Be sure to click like and subscribe for new videos every week. And if you have a movie that you really want me to watch, be sure to drop me a comment.